The Romance of a Busy Broker by O. Henry. Harvey Maxwell was the busiest broker in the USA. His personal clerk, Peter, was honest and hardworking. His personal lady secretary, Leslie, was hardworking. She was quite beautiful. In his office, not only machines but also human beings worked non-stop. This broker was so absorbed and lost in buying and selling shares, bonds, etc., that he used to forget all the things of his day-to-day life. Miss Leslie and Maxwell had married just the night before, but Maxwell had so forgotten it that the next day he proposed Miss Leslie for marriage again. It put her at such a great loss that she had tears in her eyes, and when she had to remind him of their marriage the other day in the little church. Okay, welcome to my YouTube channel Bachelor and Master English. Today we are talking about The Romance of a Busy Broker by O. Henry. In our today's discussion, we are talking about the set introduction of this story. There will be summarization and analysis, followed by critical introduction, and finally there will be the story and its description in nutshell. I am sure you will accompany me till the end of this video. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe my channel, and if you think this video is worth watching, please share it among your friends and fellows. Here we go with the text and its introduction. Story: The Romance of a Busy Broker, written by O. Henry, the pen name of William Sidney Porter. The language the story was written is in English, and it was published in 1906. The genre of this piece of work is romance and short story, and this narration is in third person, and the narrator is not mentioned here, and the setting is Maxwell's office in New York. The plot here: a New York Stock Exchange busy broker falls in love with his office staff, a stenographer, and they marry at a church in the evening. But the next day he forgets and proposes her to get married. The lady is amazed that her husband has forgotten everything. She coolly reminds him of their yesterday's marriage, but what this husband says to his wife and how he feels and how he reacts is not mentioned. It is left untold. The characters in the story are Maxwell Harvey, Mrs. Leslie, Peter, and the theme of the story is love, conflict, control, and gender roles. Here is summary in English. Harvey Maxwell is a broker in the New York Stock Exchange. He is such a busy man that the author refers to him as a machine. Every day, as soon as he enters the office, he dashes to his clerk, to his desk, and plunges into the many letters and telegrams waiting for him. One fine morning, he enters the office as usual, scheduled time, with his young lady secretary who has been working with him for a year. Mr. Peter is the personal clerk in the office. He notices with curiosity that the secretary is standing in the outer office instead of going to her designated section. After some time, she even asks him whether Maxwell had asked someone to take the responsibility of the secretary instead of her. After some time, when Maxwell is quite busy with his work, Peter comes along and tells that he has brought one lady as asked by him, that is Mr. Maxwell, as a new secretary. At this, Maxwell looks up in surprise and says his original secretary is Miss Leslie, is very good and can continue as long as she wishes, and gets going with his work again. The rush of the stocks and bonds, loans, shares, and securities is going on till the lunch hour. Just then, the sweet smell of lilac comes into Maxwell's room. He is used to smelling such sweet smell from his secretary, Miss Leslie. Today, also, this sweet smell belongs to his beloved Miss Leslie. He starts feeling a kind of attraction towards her. He dashes straight away into the inner room where Leslie has been sitting. Without any hesitation, he makes a straight proposal to her right away. He said that he deeply loves her and wants to get married with her. Having heard the marriage proposal from her boss and husband, Mrs. Leslie wonders and looks at him with surprise. She does not say anything for quite some time. However, when Maxwell keeps on declaring his love for her, tears start to roll down from her charming eyes. And she controls her, and with a smile in her face, she says that Maxwell keeps himself so busy in his work that he forgets everything after a moment. She reminds of her marriage with him the yesterday evening at 8 o'clock at the little church around the corner. Okay, this is the summary of the story in English. Now let's go with the discussion of the story in Nepali. व्यस्त दलालको प्रेम लीला। ओ हेनरी अथवा विलियम सिडनी पोर्टर अमेरिकन अथवा अमेरिकी अङ्ग्रेजी साहित्यको इतिहासमा एकदम चर्चित र विश्व साहित्यमा पनि यस्तो एउटा अचम्मको कथाको जुन अन्त्य गर्ने एउटा पद्धति उनले सुरु गरेका छन्। एउटा त्यो खालको चाहिँ कथा शैली आकस्मिक अन्त्य अथवा हामीले चाहिँ यो यस्तो होला यो खालको अन्त्य हुन सक्छ भन्ने चाहिँ हामीले सोच्नै सक्दैनौँ, तर त्यस्तो प्रकारको चाहिँ अन्त्य उनको कथामा पाइन्छ। त्यस्तो कथा लेख्ने एकदम चर्चित कथाकार ओ हेनरीको एउटा चर्चित कथा अर्थात् व्यस्त दलालको प्रेम लीला कथा आज हामी चर्चा गर्न गइरहेका छौँ। हाम्रो अहिले नेपालको कक्षा 12 को नयाँ पाठ्यक्रममा यो कथा पनि समावेश गरिएको छ, अनिवार्य अङ्ग्रेजीमा। अब यहाँ चाहिँ के छ भन्दाखेरि एउटा दलाल छ, यो चाहिँ सेयर दलाल, धितोपत्र दलाल, अब यस्तै यस्तै चाहिँ दलालको काम गर्ने र त्यसबाट चाहिँ उसले दलालीबाट धेरै पैसा कमाएको हुन्छ। यति व्यस्त हुन्छ कि उसलाई चाहिँ अब आफूले हिजो बिहे गरेको केटीसँग आज फेरि बिहे प्रस्ताव राख्दैछु भन्ने पनि थाहा छैन। उसको आफ्नो श्रीमतीसँग ऊ फेरि चाहिँ एउटा केटी ठानेर एउटा सुन्दरी ठानेर उसलाई फेरि प्रेम प्रस्ताव राखेर आजै बिहे गरौँ भनेर। अब यति मान्छे चाहिँ एउटा भौतिकवादी हो त, यो पैसामा मान्छे यसरी चाहिँ एउटा उसको चाहिँ सबै कुरा बिर्सिसकेको छ। पैसाको पछि धन सम्पत्तिको भौतिकवादी सुख सुविधाको लागि मान्छे लड्दा लड्दा सब कुरा बिर्सिसकेको अवस्थामा उसको मानवीय सम्बन्ध, उसको पारिवारिक सम्बन्ध, उसको प्रेम सम्बन्ध र उसका चाहिँ अरू सारा सम्बन्धहरू, सामाजिक सम्बन्धहरू सब चाहिँ उसले भुलेर सबै आर्थिक कुराहरूमा मात्रै ध्यान दिन्छ। अब यो अहिलेको एउटा मर्कन्टाइल एज, व्यावसायिक युगलाई चाहिँ एउटा यो कथाले एउटा प्रतिनिधित्व गर्छ। विशेष गरी विकसित देशहरूमा यो दलाली जुन ब्रोकरको काम गर्ने चाहिँ एउटा दलाल काम गर्ने मान्छेहरू हुन्छ, तिनीहरू अति व्यस्त हुन्छ। अब हामी कहाँ त्यति विकसित भइसकेको छैन, तर चाहिँ त्यहाँ त्यसरी गएको हुन्छ। यहाँ एउटा दलाल हार्वे म्याक्सवेल छ, ऊ व्यस्त छ, धनी छ। पिचर उसको निजी कारिन्दा हुन्छ, अनि लिजली त्यहाँको एउटा चाहिँ सुन्दरी केटी एउटा उसको चाहिँ सचिवको रूपमा काम गर्छ। उसले जे कुराहरू अराउँछ त्यो चाहिँ त्यहाँ एउटा काम गर्ने। लिजलीसँग पनि उसको चाहिँ एउटा कस्तो माया प्रेम छ भन्ने कुरा देखाइन्न कथामा त, तर पछाडि अकस्मात चाहिँ उसले लिजलीसँग म बिहा गर्छु तिमीलाई भनेर प्रस्ताव गर्छ। अनि त्यसपछि लास्टमा अथवा अन्त्यमा लिजलीले हामी त हिजै पो बिहा गरिसकेका हौँ त भनेर उसलाई सम्झाउँदै अवस्था आएको हुन्छ। अब उसको निजी सचिव लिजली साथ म्याक्सवेलको कार्यालय प्रवेश गर्दा लिजली आफ्नो कामतिर नगएर म्याक्सवेल भए ठाउँ जान्छ। पत्र आदि कागजातहरू लिएर अध्ययन गर्ने म्याक्सवेलतर्फ फर्केर सोध्छ काम केही छ कि भनेर। म्याक्सवेल छैन भन्ने उत्तर पाउँछ। लिजली साह्रै राम्री छ, सामान्य पहिरनमा पनि उसको लावण्य सहितको मुस्कान ऊ मुस्काएको देखिन्छ र उसको शरीरबाट सुवास आउँछ। कस्तुरीको वीणाबाट आउने सुवास के कम होला, त्यो चाहिँ त्यति चाहिँ कडा सुवास चाहिँ उसले छरेकी हुन्छ। अनि सबै उसको जुन एउटा अड्डामा सबै व्यस्त छन्, कार्यालय सहयोगहरू उसको कार्यालयमा सबै व्यस्त छन्, कार्यालयको सहयोगहरू यताउता गरिरहन्छन्। एउटी केटी साथ लिएर पिचर म्याक्सवेल छेउ उभिन्छ, साबीको खोजी गरिराखेको कुरा सम्झाउँछ। अनि त्यहाँ साबीको एउटा सेक्रेटरीको खोजी गरिराखेको सम्झाउँछ। अनि म्याक्सवेलले त्यो कुरा बिर्सेको हुन्छ। अनि पिचर म्याक्सवेल बौलाएछ भन्ने ठान्छ। लिली छँदैछ, किन चाहियो सचिव? अरू आफ्नो मालिक म्याक्सवेल बौलाएको ठान्छ। कोइलीको आवाज बीच आफू छेउ कसैको शरीरबाट सुवास आएको म्याक्सवेल ठान्छ। यो लिलीको शरीरबाट निस्केको सुगन्ध हो भनेर सोध्छ। लिली छेउ जान्छ र अकस्मात उसलाई आजै बिहे गर्न चाहेको कुरा सुनाउँछ। बिचरी लिजली दिक्क मान्छे र हिजो साँझ मात्र आफूहरू दुईजनाको बिहे लिटल चर्चमा भएको कुरा स्मरण गराउँछ। म्याक्सवेल साह्रै व्यस्त भएका कारणले बिहे भएको कुरा उसले बिर्सेको हो भने उसले लिजले ठान्छे। अब यस्तोसम्मको चाहिँ एउटा प्रसङ्ग, आफ्नो चाहिँ बिहे गरेको श्रीमती पनि बोल्ने, अनि त्यसपछि फेरि त्यही श्रीमतीसँग बिहे गर्ने प्रस्ताव गर्ने, यही हो लीला। व्यस्त दलालको प्रेम लीला कस्तो हो, यस्तै हो। तर तिनीहरूको बिचमा उसले मन परेको मन पराएको भन्ने कुरा नै छैन क्या। यसरी नै अब उसले सबै कुरा बिर्सने हो भने लिलीसँग उसको जीवन कसरी अघि बढ्ला त हामीले सोध्न सक्छौँ? सक्दैन। वास्तवमा मानवीय सम्बन्धका कुराहरू धेरै हुन्छ। जब मान्छेहरू एक आपसको बिचमा चाहिँ उसको आफ्नो जुन खालको सम्बन्ध छ त्यो सम्बन्ध भुल्छ भने त्यो सम्बन्ध भुल्ने मान्छेलाई चाहिँ अर्कोले गन्दैन क्या। कि आफ्नो एउटा औकातै नभए जस्तो गर्छ, आफ्नो एउटा सम्मानै नभएको, आफ्नो हैसियतै नभएको मान्ने ठानेर अर्कालाई चाहिँ हेप्छ, अर्कालाई चाहिँ वास्ता पास्ता गर्दैन भने उसले त वास्ता नगरेको ठान्छ नि। तर ऊ त वास्ता मैले अरूलाई वास्ता नगरेको भन्ने भन्दैन। म त आफ्नो काममा व्यस्त थिएँ, तर मैले कसैलाई वास्ता गरेको र वा नगरेको त केही पनि होइन। तर मेरो काममा हुँदाखेरि कोही मान्छे आएको थियो र उसले कुर्न पर्यो भने मैले वास्ता नगरेको भन्ने ठान्छ। तर वास्तवमा यहाँ के छ भने यी एउटा मसिन जस्तै यान्त्रिक रूपमा काम गर्ने मानिसहरूको पनि एउटा प्रेम हुँदो रहेछ। अनि ती तिनीहरू पनि विवाह गर्दो रहेछन्। विवाह गरिसकेपछि पनि त्यो प्रेम गर्ने मान्छेहरू एकजनाले बिहा भुल्दो रहेछ। अनि त्यसपछि फेरि राम्री केटी देखेर आफूले चाहिँ बिहे गरेको हिजोको बिहेको चाहिँ प्रसङ्ग भुलेर आज प्रेमको प्रस्ताव राख्छ। यदि त्यो जुन केटीलाई उसले प्रस्ताव गर्यो लिजलीलाई, त्यो ठाउँमा अर्कै केटी आज नयाँ चाहिँ कारिन्दा आएर बसेको भए अनि उसले चाहिँ त्यसैलाई गएर चाहिँ प्रस्ताव गरे हुन्थ्यो कि? यहाँ त उसले आफ्नो अफिसको एउटा कर्मचारीसँग चाहिँ पहिलादेखि प्रेम भएको त छैन। तर अकस्मात म तिमीलाई माया गर्छु, ल तिमी र म बिहा गरौँ भन्छ। यदि पिक्चरले त्यहाँ अर्को जुन एउटा महिला कारिन्दा ल्याएर चाहिँ उसलाई देखाएको छ, चिनाएको छ, अब मैले लिजलीले काम गरुन्जेल यहाँ अर्को कुनै चाहिँ निजी सचिव चाहिँदैन भनेर उसले नभनिकन ल ठिक छ त्यो ठाउँमा उसलाई काम गराउँ न त भने भए लिजलीको ठाउँमा ऊ त्यहाँ बसिरहेको भए उसलाई त्यहाँ पनि गएर प्रस्ताव गर्न सक्थ्यो कि? अनि फेरि उसले पनि बिहे गरौँ भन्थ्यो कि? प्रसङ्ग त धेरै छ। जोस् लिजली एउटा समझदार केटी हो है। ऊ पतिव्रता र अनि धैर्य नारी हो र उसले चाहिँ आफ्नो यो यस्तो व्यस्त श्रीमानलाई पनि उसले अब बिस्तारै आफ्नो पारिवारिक सम्बन्धमा चाहिँ अभ्यस्त बनाउने ऊ चाहिँ प्रण गर्दैछ। त्यो नै हो कथा। द्याट्स अल विथ द डिस्कसन अफ द स्टोरी द रोमान्स अफ अ बिजी ब्रोकर इन नेपाली. Now let's go with the analysis. The Romance of a Busy Broker is a short story by American author O. Henry. It is a romance that depicts how a person can immerse himself so much into his business that he leaves little room for any other aspect of his life. Harvey Maxwell is the protagonist of the story. In this story, Harvey is described as a robot. He and all the people who work for him are described as machines. This workaholic broker is very much in love with Miss Leslie, stenographer in his office for a year. Something that is clear to the reader by way of the fact that the previous evening Maxwell married Miss Leslie. Though he himself appears to have forgotten this and asks her to marry him again. She looked up at him with a smile. A soft pink crept over her cheek, and her eyes were kind and frank. Maxwell leaned one elbow on her desk. He still closed fluttering papers with both hands, and the pen was above his ear. Miss Leslie, he began hurriedly, I have but a moment to spare. I want to say something in that moment. Will you be my wife? I haven't had my time to make love to you in the ordinary way, but I really do love you. Oh, what are you talking about? Exclaimed the young lady. She rose to her feet and gazed upon him round eyed. Don't you understand? Said Maxwell restively. I want to marry me. I want you to marry me. I love you, Miss Leslie. I wanted to tell you. I snatched a minute. Won't you, Miss Leslie? The lady acted very queerly. At first she seemed overcome with amazement, then tears flowed from her wondering eyes, and then she smiled sunnily through them, and one of her arms slid tenderly about the broker's neck. I know now, she said softly. It's this old business that has driven everything else out of your head for the time. I was frightened at first. Don't you remember, Harvey? We were married last evening at 8 o'clock in the little church around the corner. Oh, Henry uses his surprise ending to shock the reader. When Miss Leslie tells Mr. Maxwell that they are already in love and married, how Maxwell will feel and react with his caring wife is untold. As to how Maxwell could have forgotten he married Miss Leslie the previous evening is difficult to say. It might also be a case that Henry is suggesting that Maxwell is too busy to remember that he got married, which may leave some readers thinking that perhaps the marriage between Maxwell and Miss Leslie may not last. Should Maxwell not change his habits? Work is one thing, but a married man needs to ensure that his time, particularly his time with his wife, is spread out evenly. If not, then the marriage may be short-lived. This story expresses the reality in a very exaggerated way. As in other O. Henry stories, there is surprise ending. It is also interesting as the reader never really gets any insight into how Maxwell feels about being married to Miss Leslie the other evening. We do know that he is in love with her and wants to marry her. It may be because Leslie understood him and his dedication to her since she started working as his secretary. It is possible that Maxwell may have met his match and that he will not be able to control Mrs. Leslie, the wife, as he has Miss Leslie, the employee. Throughout the story, we find nothing about their romance. Miss Leslie, through marriage, may have found her voice just as she is the last character to speak in the story. Equality may be at hand for Miss Leslie, particularly due to the fact that Maxwell is so in love with her that he is speechless. Okay, this is the discussion or the analysis of this story. Now here is character introduction. We have three characters in the story, particularly Maxwell Harvey, protagonist, Peter, his personal clerk, and Miss Leslie, his wife and secretary. Maxwell Harvey, as mentioned early in the discussion around this story's summary and analysis, we know that he works like a machine, and his people in his office they also work like machine, and he is a workaholic person. He wants himself to be always busy with his work, and he doesn't think other sides of life. He forgets social and other life. He only thinks about economic life, and work is more important than family here. And this man, this protagonist, he is boss, he is rich, he is busy, but he is forgetful person. He forgets the fundamental thing of his life. That how can he forget the marriage that he had done with his sweet lady, sweetie, whom he liked very much, for whom he declared his love. And how could that happen? And how could he forget that? But at the same time, he is a romantic person, and he expresses his love in such a way, and that he is not an ordinary lover. He is extreme and a romantic lover here. So, but how this man Maxwell Harvey react to his wife when she reminds him that they had married the other evening at 8 o'clock in the corner of the church. And what could he say? He might be speechless. He may feel ashamed, and he may say so sorry, and he will keep his promise to his wife that he will not forget their marriage again. It may be, but it depends. So much depends on Miss Leslie and her dedication, and how would she control his behavior, just only focused on money, and how would she attract him to social life. That's a matter of concern. Okay, Peter is another character here. He is not a major character, he is a minor character. He is a personal clerk of this Maxwell Harvey, and he is an obedient employee, an honest worker. He is keen observer what is happening here and what should happen. He knows that. He reminds his master and his employer, but he is so much hard working, and he doesn't think the work is just time pass, but he always devotes himself with his hard work, and is a trustship fellow of Maxwell Harvey, and he is fascinated at the same time. And here is another important character in the story is Miss Leslie. Miss Leslie is a very beautiful girl. Yeah, is a beautiful woman. She is regarded as some type of trophy for Maxwell. Such a kind of attraction that she has, lovely, like a trophy. Or he always looks plain and simple. It is not stylized. She wears small black hat, and there was gold green wing of a bird that has the gold green wing of a bird. She is a loving wife and a caring employee. At the same time, she is a forgiving wife, and she forgives her husband, who forgets their marriage that they had just some hours ago, just yesterday evening at 8 o'clock. And then how could this happen? Anyway, Miss Leslie is a patient and a forgiving wife. Okay, now it's the story or discussion of the story in nutshell. In O. Henry's story, A Romance of a Busy Broker, Harvey Maxwell, an old, very Manhattan broker, becomes overwhelmed with work and becomes very forgetful. His assistant, Mr. Pitcher, misunderstands him and called for a replacement stenographer to replace Miss Leslie, until Mr. Maxwell finds out that and gets upset, telling Mr. Pitcher that Miss Leslie will hold the job of a stenographer until she can anymore. When lunch hour for the office comes around, Mr. Maxwell realizes that he is in love with Miss Leslie. He asks her to marry him, only to find out that they get married the previous night at a small church around the corner. From the office, we have the theme of love, conflict, control, and gender roles in this short romance. This story is a testimony to how some businessmen and women can be subsumed by their work, particularly stockbrokers, an aggressive business that drives people to heart attacks. At the same time, the man has managed to remember the feeling that is most important, even if he does not remember the details. I wonder, even if one works like a machine or a clock, how can one forget just a day about his marriage, unless and until he is suffering from some mental disease or keeping oneself so engrossed in work counts as a kind of mental illness? The Romance of a Busy Broker is a story which anyone who is immersed in work can relate to, just as one forgets to eat while eating, while reading, forgetting few essential activities, but what comes with the ending is worth the test. Okay, with this discussion I have come to the end of my video discussion of The Romance of a Busy Broker. I am sure all of you got the points. If you have any queries, you can put your ideas in my comment box. Please subscribe the channel, drop a like and share this video. I will be back with another videos.